Are you looking for idioms and English phrases that native speakers like myself actually use in our daily conversation? In this English lesson, I'll teach you the top idioms and phrases that will help you speak with native English speakers. You'll feel comfortable. You'll feel like a fluent English speaker, and I promise I actually use all of these phrases in my everyday conversations as well. Let's get started with the lesson. If you are in the wrong, you are guilty or responsible for a mistake. Oftentimes, when two people have an argument over who made a mistake, one person will eventually admit they're in the wrong. This means that they say it's their fault. This is a common phrase as well. Admit that you are in the wrong. This means that you admit or you say that you did break the rules and you're just being honest, saying that you are in the wrong or responsible for a mistake. If you are in the wrong, you definitely should apologize. I'm in the wrong. Oftentimes, if we want to say that we promise to do something, even if there are circumstances that almost prevent us from doing it, we say that we will do something no matter what. So, when we say this phrase, no matter what, it means regardless of the difficulties or the circumstances. Maybe you want to promise that you will help your friend move on Saturday, and you really want to promise them, so you'll say, I will help you move Saturday, no matter what. This might mean that even if your car breaks down, or even if you have plans that come up that sound more fun than helping your friend move, you are very committed and making a very good promise to them. Sometimes we want to say that no matter the circumstances, or it just always feels like something happens. Like we say, every time I want to go outside and enjoy the day, no matter what, it rains. This just means it feels like it always rains, even if the circumstances are a day that you want to enjoy. It just feels like it always happens. So no matter what means it always happens, or it's something committed to happening. Another phrase that goes along with no matter what is no matter what I try. This means you try or attempt a lot of different methods to get something done or to solve a problem, and it feels like no matter what you try or how many things you try, it just is not working. My son has a toy car, and no matter what I try to do to fix this car, the wheels are always falling off of it. I can try gluing them, screwing them on. I've tried all sorts of different super glues to keep the wheels on, but no matter what, it just keeps breaking. I think that's because my son is a little rough and tough on his toy. Have you ever been out enjoying your day and suddenly you realize or you start to think about the fact that you left your oven on at home or you left something else hot on at home and it makes you worry a lot? This is a pretty common experience. One phrase that we can use in this situation, when a thought suddenly comes into your brain, it kind of hits you, are, it dawned on me. So, I was out enjoying my day, and it dawned on me that I forgot to turn off my curling iron. This means the thought just popped into my head. When we say that something dawned on us, it means we realize something or we think about something, a revolutionary or big idea, or just something that we totally forgot earlier. If you've ever been in public and someone comes up to you and says your name like, "Oh, hi, Kate, what are you doing?" You might start talking to them and think to yourself, I have no idea who this person is. But then, during the conversation, they mention something about the time you met before, and it will dawn on you who they are and where you met them. This has happened to me. I forget people all the time. But it dawns on you in the middle of the conversation who they are, and hopefully you can recover and make the conversation politer and friendlier after that. There are a ton of ways in English to say that you are annoyed or irritated. Here is another one. If you want to say you're annoyed or irritated, you can say that you are irked. She's irked. She's irked now. This is more of a slang or informal phrase. If you want to say that you're annoyed, for instance, maybe someone you work with is always late, and you plan a meeting with them, and they're late to the meeting, you can say, "It really irked me when they were late to the meeting," or "It really irks me how they're always late." So, irked means almost the exact same as annoyed or irritated. It's a pretty negative word to say that you're irked with someone or something. Maybe there's a sound in your room or in your house that prevents you from sleeping because it's so irritating. You can say, "The sound of my faucet leaking really irks me." So, it annoys you or irritates you. In English, there are also so many ways to say, "Calm down," "Take it easy," "Relax," "Slow down." One really common way we say this, and a really good informal phrase that you'll hear every day in English, is "slow your roll." This means stop going so fast, stop rushing something. If you just relax and go slow, it will be much more calming. Literally, slow your roll. Maybe someone is excited because you said you're going to plan a trip with them, and they say, "I've got to go buy tickets right now. I've got to start packing." You say, "Hey, slow your roll. I have to figure out if I can get vacation from work or some days off before we can buy tickets and plan this." So, this just means relax. We have to slow down the process. Don't be so eager to start the process. Slow your roll. Maybe if you have kids and they come to the house and start grabbing all this food, you might say, "Hey, slow your roll. We're about to eat some dinner soon, so don't just grab all this food and eat, because I'm going to serve you dinner and I still want you to be hungry." Slow your roll means relax, calm down, slow down the process. To slip through the cracks. How did this slip through the cracks? This phrase is used to say that a problem was overlooked or neglected. In hospitals, it's really common for health problems to sometimes slip through the cracks. You have to be very careful when you're a doctor or a nurse, and you have to constantly communicate, or patients can have a health problem that just doesn't get communicated, or they can be having some symptoms that the doctor does not know about because the communication was bad. If a problem slips through the cracks in a hospital, it can be life or death. Another way that we use this phrase very commonly is when students are in a school with teachers. If a teacher doesn't realize that a student is not being successful, they're not actually learning some of the concepts, they are slipping through the cracks. That means they'll pass on to the next grade, and they won't have actually gotten smarter. So, it's a problem. They're being neglected if they slip through the cracks. We can also use this phrase to slip through the cracks when a problem just goes completely unnoticed. And then we want to say, "Why wasn't that problem solved?" Or, "Why was that mistake not seen?" We can just say, "Well, it just kind of slipped through the cracks." This just means it was such a small problem at the time that nobody noticed until it became a bigger problem. The next phrase that I want to teach you today is to check all the boxes. This phrase is used to say that something meets all of the requirements or the criteria. For instance, when we're going shopping for a house, we might say, "This house totally checks all the boxes." That means it has all of the things that you are really wanting to have in a house. Maybe you needed a certain number of bedrooms for your family. Maybe you were hoping to have a big bathtub, a big kitchen, and a big yard. It checks all the boxes. Or if you're going house shopping and you really like the house, you really like the neighborhood, but you were hoping the house would maybe have more of an updated feel to it, or nicer bedrooms, you could say, "The house doesn't quite check all of the boxes." This just means it does not meet all the criteria that you had in your head. If you want to say to someone that you need to work hard in order to meet all of the expectations and all of the criteria for a project, you could say, "We really have to check all of the boxes on this one and work very carefully." It just means that you are not missing anything that needs to be done. Have you ever had one of those moments in life where you just feel so confident and so successful? In English, we have a phrase to describe this feeling. The phrase is riding high. He's riding high. When you feel like you're riding high, you just feel like everything is going correctly. It's going right in life. After my wedding, it was just such a fun time with all of my friends, my family. Everyone had the greatest time. I had gotten wedding gifts, and we were going on our honeymoon. I was totally riding high. Another way we use this phrase in English is sometimes we're not talking about drugs or being intoxicated. We say we are on a high. This just means we're having a really good time. We feel like we're really successful and that things are going our way in life. So you can either say riding high or on a high. At first glance, we use this phrase very commonly in English to say that our first observation, or the first time we look at something, it seems like one thing. But if you look at it further, after first glance, it might be something else. For instance, I was at the park the other day with my children, and there was this woman there. She had red hair, and she had 2 young children with her, also with red hair. So, at first glance, I thought she was their mom. I said, "Oh, how old are your kids?" She said, "I'm actually the nanny," which means the babysitter or the person who watches kids. I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry to mistake you for the mom." She said, "No, I'm not a mom. I just happen to have red hair just like the kids I watch all day." So, at first glance, I thought she was the mom. But after asking her, she wasn't. It was a little bit awkward, but she said that it was a common mistake that other people make. So, at first glance, you might think something, and then you might be corrected later. When we're asked to solve a problem, and we're an expert on something, we might take a look at the problem very quickly, without making our final judgment of the problem or saying how you're actually going to solve it. We can just say what our thoughts are at first. We can say, "At first glance, I think you might be looking at this problem." When we say this, we mean that we want to study it a bit more before we can actually say exactly how to solve the problem, or we need to study it a bit more to be sure of how to solve the problem. But you're just giving your first guess by looking at it very quickly. This is how we use the phrase "at first glance." Another very similar phrase to "at first glance" is "off the cuff." When we do something off the cuff, it just means that we didn't have any preparation or we didn't put a lot of thought into it. We just did it very quickly because it was just asked of us to do it right now. A really common way we use this phrase is we say, "I'm just giving a speech off the cuff." That means you did not prepare for the speech that you had to give, and you actually didn't know ahead of time that you were going to give the speech, or maybe you just didn't prepare. But it means you're talking just out of your own brain. You don't have anything formally prepared for the speech. You're speaking off the cuff. Again, you might ask an expert some questions about a problem or a question that you have, and they might just be speaking off the cuff. This just means that they don't know a ton about the situation yet, but they're just giving their expert opinion without a lot of prepared thoughts. A phrase that I find very useful is the phrase, "to work somebody in." When you work someone or something into your schedule, this is commonly how the phrase is used. It means that you are going to try to make some time for something. Oftentimes, when you are going to somebody who provides a service, like maybe they give haircuts or do nails, and they have a busy schedule, you ask them at the last minute, "Hey, do you have any time to do my hair today? It's really important. I have a big wedding this weekend," or "I have a big meeting and I want to look nice." They might say, "Well, I am booked for the day," which means their schedule is completely full. "But if I have some time, usually when I eat lunch, I can work you in." This just means that they can try to make a little bit of space in their schedule. Maybe if someone doesn't show up, or if they just want to do your hair over their lunch break, they're working you into their schedule. Maybe it's important to you to start exercising, but you feel like you're really busy. You might say, "I need to work in some time to exercise into my schedule." This just means you need to make some space, even though it's busy. You need to try to find a few minutes a day to exercise or go for a good walk. I recommend working in some time to study English into your schedule every day. A really common phrase that you might have heard English speakers use is, "It's harder than it sounds." This phrase means that you can say something like, "Find some time to study English every single day." That sounds very easy. Of course, you could just go watch a television show in English, or you could just watch a YouTube video or read a book in English. This sounds very easy, but it's harder than it sounds. Another way that we use this phrase is to say, "It's more difficult than it sounds." Of course, difficult and hard can mean exactly the same thing. Maybe your friend just lost their job and you say, "Well, maybe you should start your own business." Your friend might say, "Starting your own business is harder than it sounds." This means that you can just say it. It sounds easy to just say it, but to actually do it is more difficult. It takes a lot of time. So, we use this phrase when we're just saying that somebody is saying something to us, like it's easy, but we want to recognize or tell them that it actually is difficult. Do you have the guts to go skydiving? I certainly don't have the guts to do this, but a lot of people do. The phrase "to have the guts" means to have the courage or to be brave enough to do something. We can use this phrase, "have the guts," in extreme examples like skydiving, or maybe just a smaller example like, "Do you have the guts to go ask this girl out on a date?" This just means, are you brave enough and do you have the courage to do something? Guts in English is a slang word for courage. If you want to say that someone is really good at something, and they've done it better right now than they've ever done it before, you can use this English phrase, "You have outdone yourself." They're planning to outdo themselves. So the phrase is, "to outdo oneself." A really common way that we use this phrase is, if someone is cooking a meal like a chef, and they're really, really good at cooking, and you've had a lot of good meals from them. You go to their house, you visit, and they make you the best food ever. You can say, "You have really outdone yourself." This is a very polite comment to make. It's a really good compliment to give someone who is cooking food when you find their food really, really good. So oftentimes when people do really nice stuff for us when we visit them, and they're just providing a lot of comfort for you, you can say, "You have really outdone yourself." And if you are in a competition or you're at work and you think you've done a really good job, you could say, "I've really outdone myself this time." This just means you have beaten your personal best. When you want to say that you need to focus on something closely or more intensely, you can say that you're going to zero in on it. Hey, you zeroed in on something already. For instance, if you are in school, in college or university, and it becomes the end of the semester, and you really need to zero in on studying for your final examination, this means you need to stop doing other activities because these examinations are so important that you need to zero in and focus very hard. Another thing, if you're searching for something and you want to focus on just one thing or one area for it, you can use the phrase to zero in on something. When there is a crime, and there is a detective or a police officer searching for the person who did it, they might start to get some clues that help them zero in on a person that they think did the crime, or as we call them, the suspect. So if they are pretty sure that someone did it, they'll start zeroing in on this person, trying to find more evidence that they did the crime. A really common way that we say that somebody has followed the rules or the guidelines, or they have been very honest, is to say that they have played by the rules. At work, it's very important to play by the rules. This means not lying, cheating, or stealing. Now, sometimes, when you're in a competition with someone, they can do some things that are dishonest to try to win, and that means they did not play by the rules. Some people use this phrase, "Hey, we don't play by the rules," to mean that they don't do things in the conventional or normal way that the thing is done. They try to do something that is revolutionary or different in order to accomplish the task. And a lot of times when people use this phrase in this way, it doesn't mean that they're trying to be dishonest. It means that they're just not trying to do everything the same way or by the rules that have been established for a long time. So, for this phrase, it doesn't actually have to be very formal rules. You can either be talking about just the conventional way that something is done to mean rules, or you can just mean that someone is being honest and playing by the rules. When you want to say that someone has planned something very thoroughly and carefully, you can say that they have left nothing to chance. This again is a really common phrase in English to use when someone is just very meticulous and wants nothing to go wrong in a very important plan. A lot of times, when people plan their wedding days, they will plan, when the pictures will be taken, how they'll be arriving there, exactly what they'll be wearing, and exactly who will be bringing their grandma to the wedding. They do not leave anything to chance. This just means they try to think of every detail so that everything happens correctly and everything is good on the day, and nothing just sporadically happens that ruins the day or creates a problem. So, they leave nothing to chance. If you want to tell someone to be very prepared for something, Make sure to tell them, do not leave anything to chance. This just means to actually think through all the details of the plan. A phrase that is sort of similar to leaving nothing to chance is the phrase, leave no stone unturned. Leave no stone unturned is used more in the instance of searching for something. It means you need to be very thorough in searching for something. It's almost like you're looking through a bunch of rocks in the woods. You wouldn't want to skip a rock or leave a stone unturned. This is a phrase that we use. You'll have to let me know if you have a similar phrase in your language as well. This idiom, leave no stone unturned, I think is pretty universal. Maybe someone in your family has a rare health problem, and you have gone to every expert that you can find. You have gone to Google many times and searched for an answer to the problem. You have left no stone unturned. This means you have searched everywhere for a solution to the problem. If you're looking in your house for an object, or you're looking around somewhere where you think you have lost it, you can use this idiom as well to say that you have searched very thoroughly. I lost my phone yesterday, and I went back to the park. I left no stone unturned looking for it. This means you were very thorough and looked everywhere it could possibly be. To stay on track, if you want to say that someone is remaining focused and remaining on schedule, you can say that they are staying on track. You can think about a running race that's on a track or a circular running path. If someone stays on track, they will eventually get to the finish line. So that's kind of the idea of where this idiom comes from. Sometimes, when you're trying to finish a project at work, there might be some setbacks, but it's important to try to stay on track with the schedule that you created so that you can still finish the project on time. Maybe you say to your family, okay, we need to clean up the house today, and as you're cleaning, someone in your family finds some old pictures, and you guys are all looking at old pictures and your old photo albums, which can be really fun, but you need to put them away and stay on track. Otherwise, the house is not going to get cleaned for the day. You guys aren't focused. You need to say to your family, let's stay on track. Let's keep cleaning. We can look at these after. If you're familiar with the sport of baseball, this next idiom might make sense to you. The phrase is out of left field. A little left field, but I think it's terrific. When something is extremely unexpected or surprising, we say it's out of left field. Typically, in baseball, we say the left outfield is a less active position, and there aren't as many balls going out there. So it's far out, and we just don't expect a lot to be happening there. This idiom just translates to mean that something comes, out of nowhere. You're not expecting it. You're really surprised by it. You don't really have a reason why it happened. We say it's out of left field. Maybe your friend, who doesn't even have a boyfriend or a husband, comes to you and says, I'm pregnant. You would say, wow, that was out of left field. I was not expecting that. That would be very surprising. You can also use this for very pleasant surprises, like maybe someone you know brought you warm cookies. You can say, well, that was so unexpected and out of left field. Thank you so much. That means it's not your birthday or any sort of celebration. They just did something nice for no reason at all. It seems like a force to be reckoned with. Indeed, a force to be reckoned with means that you should not deal with something that is really influential or powerful very lightly. You should be very prepared if you are going to deal with them or you're going to try to fight against them. This is a really common way we use this phrase. a force to be reckoned with. The phrase reckon with something means to prepare for it. Often, when we use the phrase a force to be reckoned with, it means that it is a really powerful thing or a really influential thing. If you're going to try to fight against it, you need to be very prepared and don't think that it's just easy. The American military is a force to be reckoned with. Of course, we have more military power than anyone else in the world, so people try not to reckon with the military because, they're very powerful. We can also describe individuals who are very hard-working or powerful as a force to be reckoned with. If you want to say that someone will fight for their ideas or their opinions no matter what, and we notice that they are very hard-working and powerful, we can say, you are a force to be reckoned with. This just means that if anyone wants to debate with you, they should really be prepared because you are very hard-working and powerful. A great informal phrase to say that something is of the highest quality is to say it's top-notch. Top-notch. If you want to recommend a hotel or a restaurant to someone, and you want to tell them that it's really good food and really high quality and everything is good about it, you can say it is top-notch. Or you could say, the food is top-notch, or the service is top-notch. You're basically saying it's of the highest quality. You can also compliment someone's work or performance by saying, your work was top-notch, or your performance was top-notch. If you want to say that something is not of the highest quality but it's pretty good, you can say it's perfectly fine. The weather today was perfectly fine. This means it wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold, it wasn't the nicest day ever. Maybe it wasn't a day where you want to go swimming or spend a ton of time outside, but if you say it's perfectly fine, that means it's okay. If you want to say it's perfectly fine, it means there is nothing really wrong with it. Someone might tell you, it's perfectly fine to ask for help if you need it. This means there is no problem with asking for help. Or maybe someone has you over to their house and they say, it's perfectly fine if you want to leave your shoes on. It's not perfectly fine in my house, but for some people, it is perfectly fine. They don't really care if you leave your shoes on when you come into their house. Another really informal and kind of funny phrase to use when you want to tell someone to calm down, relax, or slow down is to say, cool your jets. Oh, cool your jets. We think about a jet or an airplane, and they're very hot and they're ready to go. The engines are running. You can say cool your jets to mean, turn them off. Don't be so ready to go because we have to just calm down for a minute. Maybe your friend is asking you, are you on your way? Are you coming? You might say, cool your jets. I have to take a shower and eat breakfast before I come over to your house. This just means relax. I'll be there soon on my own time. Be careful about how you use this phrase because it could be offensive if someone is eager, and they might find it offensive if you tell them to calm down. If you want to tell someone that they need to spend their time and energy on something, you can tell them to channel their energy into that thing. For instance, when your children are crying and complaining, you might say, why don't you channel your energy into doing something more productive, like reading a book or going to play with some Legos or doing an art project? This just means instead of spending your energy complaining or in a negative way, channel your energy into something positive and productive. Sometimes, when people have tragedies in their life, they will channel their energy into doing something productive for society, like starting a charity or honoring someone who has died. They'll channel their grief and energy into, doing good things for other people to honor that person. So, when we tell someone to channel their energy into something, we're just saying that they need to try to put their effort or enthusiasm into something else rather than something negative or unproductive. Some people say that the show The Simpsons is dead on in their predictions. If you haven't heard about this, Google The Simpsons theories. They have predicted a lot of things on their show that have actually happened later in real life. So we use the phrase dead on to mean accurate. This is an informal phrase that we use a lot in English. Maybe you are in an archery competition with a bow and arrow and you hit the bullseye. You can say that shot was dead on, it was very accurate. If you want to say that two things are completely different and not even comparable, you can say they are like apples and oranges. This idiom is pretty funny to use. Apples and oranges, here, Sheldon. So American football and what the rest of the world calls football is like apples and oranges. They're not the same at all. Just because we call them the same thing does not mean they're comparable. So, this is just giving your opinion. Like, they're not the same at all. They're like apples and oranges. Of course, they're both fruits, but they taste completely different and they feel completely different. Some people prefer Coke to Pepsi, and they like Coca-Cola so much that they say Coke and Pepsi are like apples and oranges. You can't even compare them. Or some people might like Pepsi more than Coca-Cola, and they might say the same exact thing just with Pepsi instead of Coca-Cola. So, if you want to say that two things are not of the same quality or just can't be compared, even though they're similar, you can say they're apples and oranges. If you want to say that there was a moment that was very awkward and embarrassing, you can use this phrase, cringeworthy. Maybe you go to a stand-up comedy show and the comedian is telling jokes and nobody is laughing. You could say that performance was absolutely cringeworthy. It was very uncomfortable. Or maybe there is a moment in a meeting at work where someone starts crying and getting very emotional, and everyone just feels very awkward and uncomfortable about it. You could say it's kind of cringeworthy. Now, this phrase is definitely associated with being a negative thing, so be careful how you use it. If you see something that is really something that someone would be interested in, you can say it is up their alley. This is an interesting, kind of funny phrase that we use to say that something is really suited to someone's interests. For instance, you might have someone in your life who really likes anime, and you see that the movie theater in town is showing some anime film. You can say, "That looks right up your alley." This means that it suits your interests very well. Right up your alley. Thank you so much for studying this English lesson with me.